So welcome to volume 11 in my 10 games in my NES set series. In this one, we're gonna be looking at games 101 to 110. And in this set of 10, there's actually 3 that are movie title games, and 2 of those had R ratings on those movies that we got games for on the NES. So this isn't a top 10 list, nothing like that. This is just me going through the games in my collection. Maybe there's some on here that you have nostalgia for, some that you played as a kid. Let me know in the comments if there's anything like that, and let's get into this. So game number 101 in my NES set. Felt like kind of a milestone when I got past that. I had 100 Nintendo games. That's a lot. There's so many more here now because this series has been a slow burn, slowly building this series as we go. But number 101 on that list is a game that I feel is like just accessible for everyone to play. A lot of us probably have fond memories of it. It's gonna be RC Pro-Am. I feel like I love this one because I remember just putting it in the system, renting it, taking it home, and just being able to play it. It wasn't crashing, it wasn't off the track. The corners just pushed me around the corner if I didn't make the corner. I'm not worried about collecting money and upgrading that vehicle. I'm just picking up the items on the track and upgrading, which I think is really fun. I like that I can just drive around and pick up the tires and the upgrades and stuff on the track, and I don't have to save that money and then just like strategically spend it in places. Just felt like as a kid, it made this a lot easier to play, and I kind of knew what I was doing that way. RC Pro-Am is actually brought to us by Rare, one of those first games that Rare was kind of throwing out on the NES, and really one of those titles that really started to build their name as they went. Like I said, it's nice that those hazards and upgrades are both on the track. There's those puddles, those oil slicks you can spin out and crash. You can get missiles, invincibility. You can take out some of those enemies with those missiles right at the last second and then score that win. And as you're going, you're picking up those items, increasing that tire grip, increasing that acceleration, increasing that top speed on your car, and just having fun while you're doing it. I think that's my favorite thing about RC Pro-Am is I can basically just pin it and hope for the best. Try to grab that stuff as I go and just aim for a top 3 finish. That way I know I'm gonna make it through to the next race. Now one thing, because I have been flopping back and forth between this and RC Pro-Am 2, because we're gonna look at RC Pro-Am 2 in another video here. But one thing I did notice after that is RC Pro-Am 2, it's like they pulled the camera away from the track a little bit, which I feel like makes it so those corners don't jump out at me quite as quickly. RC Pro-Am, the first one, kind of feels like I'm too close to the vehicles now, and some of those corners just come out of nowhere on me. But that's also part of the fun because I'm not 100% sure. I can look at the little track map in the bottom and see what's coming, but I can't pay attention to everything at the same time. So sometimes those corners just come out of nowhere, and then I'm rubbing the side and pinning it again, trying to get back into first place. But RC Pro-Am is such a classic game. I feel like this one has a lot of history for a lot of us as kids. I feel like we talked about RC Pro-Am a lot on the playground back in the day. It was one of those ones that got traded amongst friends, so everyone got to experience it, everyone got to play it, and it was such a classic game. To this day, this is always going to be a classic racer. One of my favorite racers, the most accessible one on the NES. Game number 101 in my NES set, RC Pro-Am. Game number 102 in my NES set is an Ultra title, so Konami technically, and this one definitely has a weird story behind it and kind of feels like that weird cousin that no one really wants to talk about.
Oh, the house is gorgeous, Clark.
Betty?
Game number 102 in my NES set is Snake's Revenge. Now this is gonna be the sequel to the NES Metal Gear game. This one doesn't really fit in the canon of the Metal Gear series that we know and love today. Metal Gear was like an NES port of the MSX game Metal Gear, and then they decided we're just gonna make a sequel on that, and they actually used like a lot of the same things in this one that were in the first Metal Gear on the NES. And it is interesting that while they were making this one was in development as a sequel to the NES game, and they didn't tell the original team, the original creators of the Metal Gear Solid game on the MSX that this was even happening, which actually led them to kind of want to make that Solid Snake game, and then that pushed us into that Metal Gear Solid and all the way through all those other Metal Gear games to this day, which is why this one is kind of that off the corner one, doesn't fit, and it's just kind of random. A lot of people don't like this one. I actually don't mind this one. This is a little less, like, you can stealth it, but if you get caught, you can just kind of ramrod your way through. And honestly, I'm not good at a stealth game. I would rather just bowl through the enemies, take them out, and continue on, which I think might be why I don't mind this. The hitboxes on some of those enemies are a real pain in the butt. It's like an orthogonal or whatever that term is, where they can see you. So it's like up this way and this way. If you're on those sides, they can't see you. But when they see you, because you might have punched them and missed it, because that hitbox is so hard to hit on some of these guys, all of a sudden they see you. So I find a lot of the time I am just bowling through those enemies. It's interesting in this one that I start right away with a gun. I feel like that's kind of counterintuitive to the Metal Gears that we know and love now. But you know what? For me and my playstyle, that works out perfectly. They did use almost the exact same menu system that they used in the Metal Gear game on the NES, along with that really annoying and frustrating keycard system that they had on the first one, where I'm like scrolling through those keycards trying to find my way through the door to the next area, which can take forever, because like the deeper you get into the game, the more keycards you have and the more options you have to scroll through to get through that door. Now the first level in this one, you're in like the jungle. There's some spotlights that are going around. I like that. I think that's fun. You can get hung up and then all of a sudden get seen with the terrain that you can't see. That's just that black space. But if you watch the spotlights go back and forth, you can kind of figure it out. There's definitely some areas where you want to walk in at the right spot on the screen, or you are going to step right into a spotlight or into an enemy and get caught. And there's also definitely one area on that first area, if you're getting told to do something and you keep going there and it doesn't happen, move down as far as you can on that screen before you walk into that area, and it'll be fine. And once we're out of that jungle, out of that first kind of area, it does kind of shift more towards that in the buildings Metal Gear style feel from the first game on the NES. So we are going to be exploring around in these buildings, trying to find weapons, trying to find items, finding clues, freeing hostages that are pots, they call them in the manual for some reason. Prisoners of that T word with the ism at the end that I'm not going to say on video, which is kind of a weird terminology for them, but okay, whatever. Some other funny stuff about this is the back of the box tells me who the villains are, and then in the game the villain is someone totally different. It's almost like they didn't know what they were writing when they wrote the box art or stuff in the manual, and then just made the game like differently. There are some other oddities in this. The ship level has some weird looking doors and stuff you're gonna want to pay attention to, or you're gonna get lost for like hours, trust me. Some of the bosses are a real slog in this one, really rough, really hard, but honestly this is a game that I do like. Unlike the first one on the NES, there's definitely a Metal Gear in this one that I'm gonna have to deal with, and that's even really difficult. There's some crazy traps, stuff that's just gonna kill you right away. You're gonna be restarting this. You're gonna get a lot of game overs, but if you just keep on pushing through, learn from every time you fail or every mistake you make, this one can be fun. You just need a lot of patience. This is one of those games that I would say is probably like Nintendo hard, but not for the fun like platforming reason, because the platforming levels in this one, which they do throw into it, are really stiff and the controls are really difficult. Metal Gear Solid Snake's Revenge on the NES, difficult game, one that a lot of people don't like. People think this is hot garbage, but it's gonna be 102 in my NES set. Another game developed by Rare for the NES is going to be 103 in my NES set. It's going to be one that I'm just fueled on nostalgia for, one that I love based on nostalgia, not because it's a good game at all. Number 103 in my NES set is gonna be Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, like I said, this is developed by Rare. It's released by LJN. So we do have the rainbow on the box, that dreaded LJN title. Again, it's a Rare game, so it's not a bad game. It definitely follows the movie a little bit. It doesn't have a real linear plot, like you have to get all the pieces to the will. Which order you get them is kind of up to you. And if you pay attention, you go into some of those building areas and you ask the first person you see, they will tell you if you should be searching that building or if it's just empty. They took a lot of stuff from the Roger Rabbit movie, which was kind of cutting edge at the time, and brought it towards this. I know I've said it before, me and my buddy Ron love this game. This is one that I do need to finish one day when I can pin him down and we can just play our way through it. Now, Roger Rabbit is there, but he's kind of just like a sidekick. There is a Game Boy game that is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and you do play as Roger Rabbit. That's one that I definitely want to pick up and try, because I do like Roger Rabbit, the character. But this one is just exploring. I feel like I'm adventuring around, just playing kind of at my own pace. It is interesting that all the levels, the items you pick up in them are randomized, so you have to go back and do a lot of searching, which I enjoy. I enjoy searching around in a game and trying to find the stuff that's in there. I like that I can get the whistle, which gets me Benny the Cab. I don't like that I have to like hold select and then left and right over through the items, because sometimes you get in a situation where the bat is attacking you and I'm trying to get to the point that I use my jumping shoes before the bat pushes me into the chasm. There's a lot of fun and interesting clues in this one, some interesting dialogue from the characters. You do actually get Jessica Rabbit's phone number at one point, and that's not actually for in the game. That was actually a phone number you could call back in the day, and they would give you tips and tricks for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I think it's interesting you get chased by the Toon Patrol, get caught, and then have to tell them the jokes or answer the punchline to make them laugh, which is kind of right out of the movie. I think they pulled some stuff from the movie and put it into this one, and just made this into like a fun adventure game, in my opinion. It does have a super, super long password system that for some reason, I don't understand it. There's zeros and the letter O, and they do look kind of similar. So luckily now you have your phone, you can just take a picture of the password and continue on, but you're gonna wanna zoom in on that on your phone and make sure you're putting a zero where it should be a zero and an O where you should put an O on some of those passwords. Again, this is one that I rented all the time. I got this one eventually from my parents because I rented it so much. So I'm fueled on nostalgia for this game, which is why I enjoy it. You might think it's hot garbage, but you know what? To me, Roger Rabbit is a fun time. I can't wait to one day finally sit down and play it all the way through. We got to the point that we had the whole will, we made it a Toontown, and then we just didn't have the time to finish it. But one day we will finish this, and it's gonna be awesome. Game number 103 in my NES set, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Game number 104 in my NES set is gonna be Wizards and Warriors 2 Iron Sword. Now, these games are very different. The first one maybe was a little bit better than this one. The attack in it, you might as well just jump into the enemies with your sword sticking out, because if you try to stop and attack some of those enemies, you're just gonna get beat out by them. The enemies seem really quick in this. I do like that I'm adventuring around, I'm exploring, trying to find those items to give to like the animal spirit or creature in that level, so we can take me and I can get the spell, and then I can use the spell to beat the boss of that level. But some of those items are really difficult to get. This game can be really frustrating. Again, the hitbox, the attack in it, pretty useless. You can upgrade from like the dagger to the sword, makes that sword get a little more distance on the attack, but I'm just pointing myself at enemies and jumping into them a lot of the time, especially when I'm adventuring around. But this one for me is a little rough. I know this series definitely has people that love it. This one does have Fabio on the box looking super like he doesn't really want to be there for that photo shoot, but you don't play as him, which I maybe would have fixed a little bit. Maybe he's in the armor. He has really buggy eyes in his armor for some reason. Fun game, interesting game, brought to us by Acclaim. And you know what? It's neat to have that series of games. I do have a couple of the other ones, and I want to finish the set of this eventually. Wizards and Warriors, cool set of games. Iron Sword, not the best outing on that. And something you do need to be aware of while you're playing this is if you run into a boss and you haven't got that item to give to that animal to get that spell, you're just gonna die. It's just gonna happen repetitively. You will not be able to deal with that boss unless you have that spell. But it is an interesting adventure game, fun one to have on the system. Wizards and Warriors 2, Iron Sword, number 104 in my NES set. So another game brought to us by Acclaim is going to be number 105 in my NES set. This is another one of those movie title games. This is actually an R-rated movie that we probably shouldn't have been watching as kids. So it's kind of funny that with all the rules and regulations that Nintendo had on what you could and couldn't have in a Nintendo game, that they decided to bring some of these R-rated movies over to the system. Game number 105 in my NES set is going to be Total Recall. Now, Total Recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I'm sure we're all aware what happens in this movie, what it's kind of known for in the meme-averse or whatever you want to call it. Now, I feel like the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies that they brought over, those ones kind of fit a little bit on the NES because as kids, we all knew who Arnold Schwarzenegger was. He was a big action star, and we were all kind of aware of that, which made it a little less that it was a rated R movie. The gameplay and the controls are definitely a little rough. It has some interesting things that it tries to do and kind of stumbles and fails at. So level 1 is definitely a little weird. I keep on walking along, getting grabbed by some short dude, pull into an alley, and then he tries to attack me repetitively. Don't remember that in the movie, but okay. And it does try to follow the movie a little bit. You're trying to get back to your apartment, but then you end up like in a conflict with the girlfriend from the movie, who, if you've watched the movie, you'll understand. And then it kind of diverges a little bit, gets a little different. Now, it does have some interesting connections to the movie like that. There's some really weird level choices in this one. There's one where you're driving a car and it's kind of done pretty poorly. And then they do, I guess, pull some of these scenes from the movie into the later levels, but it's not really done that well. Again, the controls are rough. And when I do die, it's like they're not sure what movie we're in. Because when I do die, it's got a screen with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It says game over, and at the bottom it says, I'll be back. Definitely is from a Terminator movie. Definitely not from Total Recall. But Total Recall, the game, just kind of a meh platformer. I don't know if I'd go out of my way to play this one. But interesting to have, great to have it in the set. Number 105 in the NES set is gonna be Total Recall. Game number 106 in my NES set, a Data East game, is gonna be Tag Team Wrestling. Now for me, this is a weird game. I never played this one as a kid, so I don't have any nostalgia. I'm not driven by nostalgia like I was with Roger Rabbit, but you might be. Now this is an arcade port, and in this one, I feel like you get thrown out of the ring all the time. This would definitely be more fun as a 2-player game. You'd probably enjoy it more or have nostalgia if you played it with a sibling back in the day based on that. But the attack system in this one is kind of different, kind of hard to figure out. Now it wants you to press A to initiate that attack. The sprite interaction in this one is kind of difficult, kind of hard to figure out, but once you do figure that out and you press A, you don't want to be just smashing A, because A is initiate the attack and A is select the attack. What it wants you to do is hit A to initiate that attack and then use the B button to scroll through like a menu system to select that attack, and then you have to press A to make that attack happen. Which I find myself just doing the first attack all the time because I'm trying to get that to work. Come on, figure out where he is, let's initiate that attack, and then I'm just performing the first kick that comes up. I do like that I can tag out. I do like that it has that interaction where I'm thrown out of the screen. Sometimes your partner, your tag team partner will come in and help you out and assist you. But I just get my butt kicked in this one all the time by the computer because it doesn't have to think about that menu selection, right? It's not thinking about that, it's just performing the actions. And I have to take a second, try to find that body slam, and then make it happen. Again, maybe you're fueled with nostalgia for this one and absolutely love tag team wrestling on the NES. For me, there's probably some better wrestling games if I really wanted to play a wrestling game on a Nintendo, but this one's fun, this is interesting. I want to play this one as 2 players a little bit more, check it out a bit more, but you know what? Tag team wrestling is going to be number 106 in my NES set. Now, game number 107 in my set is a Taito game, and it's actually a localized version of a Famicom game. Game number 107 in my NES set is Wrath of the Black Manta. Now, this is a fun and interesting game in my opinion. I'm trying to rescue some kids. I get to go all around the world doing it. I'm just always in my ninja gear. I get a phone call at like 4 a.m. or something in it, and I'm just ready to ninja up. I'm ninja suited, ready to go. Now again, it's side-scrolling. There is like a weird kind of attack menu system where you gotta like select these attacks before you go, and you gotta hold the button combination to make it happen. I do like that I can just attack. I can attack all the time. I'm not running out of throwing stars or something like that. Some of the attacks are pretty interesting and fun. There is some different levels in this one. There's some interesting bosses. Some of them are a little difficult. Patience. Patience is a big one in this one. Something I don't normally have and do struggle a little bit with some of the bosses because of that. I do like that I can kind of grapple with some of these enemies and ask them questions. A lot of the times those questions are pointless and they just don't know anything. But I think that's a neat little feature. I like that they put that in the game. It does have this interesting flying level where I'm holding on to like a magic carpet. It's a little difficult. I guess it's neat they put that in there. This might not be the best game. It's a very interesting game. It is kind of a fun, slightly hidden gem style game that would be fun to pick up. I was excited when I got it because I had heard that. And I do like the gameplay. I do enjoy playing it. Wrath of the Black Manta is going to be number 107 in my NES set. So game number 108 in my NES set is brought to us by Sunsoft, the people that brought us Blaster Master. This is another one of those movie title games. This is for sure an R-rated movie, and it's not a very good game. They didn't do a very good job of it. What they did with it is interesting. I don't know if it should have been the type of title that was brought over to the NES, like I talked about earlier, especially with all those rules and regulations they had, or there was no blood or anything like that in the Nintendo games that we saw in North America. This is an Oscar-winning movie, but this movie is pretty intense. It's a movie with Charlie Sheen in it, if you can figure that out. I'll give you 2 seconds to guess what it is, and you have a point. You can get some points if you guess what it is. It's gonna be Platoon. Now, Platoon is an amazing movie, but the game that Sunsoft brought us kind of falls short. Now, the first level we're exploring through a jungle maze. It does have the same feel as another movie title game that we have looked at in the past. Has that Rambo style to it, going through this jungle maze. The enemies come out of nowhere. The controls are fairly unresponsive, and it's weird that you have to press up on the D-pad to jump, and we're only kind of using that to jump over tripwires. First level, we're gonna try to get through that maze, get the bombs, and then there's a ton of backtracking. Go back through a village, don't shoot the civilians, blow up the bridge, and then you move on to the next level. Now, the next level is like this split screen first person style of game. One side of the screen is the map, which is really helpful. Probably the best part of the game is it has a map you can use. The first person stuff of that is interesting. It's not great. We're just kind of looking for items, trying to get through that, and then off to the next level. Now, the third level is this weird foxhole style like gallery shooter. We're just getting attacked by a bunch of guys, and then once they're done attacking, we move on. And then it brings us to this last phase where it's like this top-down scroller where I'm trying to scroll up and kill the enemies, get to the top, gotta pick the direction I want to go. Now, you know I love when a video game tries to use different styles of gameplay to make the game fun, but this one, I don't know about this one. This isn't a very good game, Sunsoft. I don't know what they were thinking with this one. They probably just got the title and were like, we're gonna do this. It's an Oscar-winning movie. It's gonna sell. For sure, cartridges are gonna fly off the shelves. So game number 108 in my NES set is Platoon. Now, game number 109 in my NES set is Nintendo World Cup. Now, I love that this has that Kunio-ku style, that River City Ransom, that Super Dodgeball style characters to it. I think those are the coolest looking characters. This is like a super violent soccer game. I love the sprites. They make me laugh. The facial expressions they make. when you knock them down, super cool. Some of the attacks, the power moves are super cool. I liked it in the bottom corner. It shows me that I'm telling that player I want the pass, and he's saying, okay, he's gonna send it to me. So I'm kind of prepare myself if I can pay attention to that. It's a fun one. I like that I can set up how my team is gonna play, how that AI is gonna control. Honestly, is it a great soccer game? No. Is it a fun soccer game that really takes soccer and kind of turns it on its side? Absolutely. And it is a 4-player game. It's one that's super fun to play, either co-op or versus. This is a great game, definitely one you should check out. And again, the sprites are gonna make you laugh. Some of the facial expressions they do are awesome. Game number 109 in my NES set, Nintendo's World Cup. Game number 110 in my NES set is gonna be Time Lord. Now this is brought to us by Milton Bradley. Yeah, the board game people. Now this is a side-scrolling platform style of game. Aliens have gone to the past so they can make it easier to conquer us in the future. So you're going back in the past trying to deal with those situations. Has a bunch of levels like that. There's like France you go to, you're in like the trenches in France. It does have some interesting levels. You got to pick up these 5 orbs in each level. There's some cool weapons. You go Wild West for a little while, you get that 6-shooter. I like Western games. It's definitely got some fun aspects to it. It's not the worst side scroller there is. Some of the bosses are a little difficult. Wish there was like a hit bar on some of them and stuff like that, but it's not a bad game. It's fun to throw in and play for a little bit. But if you're looking for a really fun review of Time Lord, I highly suggest checking out my friend James's video, Big Ol' Words. Check out his video on Time Lord. He does such an awesome job. All of his stuff is super funny, super well put together, really great watch. Check out Big Ol' Words, you won't regret it. Because he's gonna do such a better job reviewing this game than I ever could. Number 110 in my NES collection, Time Lord. So that's another 10 games we've looked at in my NES set. Now I know they're not super in-depth reviews that I do in this series, but I just enjoy talking about the games. I like showing you guys what I have in my set. Not I'm like 430 games into the set. I'm really excited. I can't wait to have less than 200 that I need to get. I never thought I would be at this point. I never thought that I was gonna actually complete the full set. When those first thoughts were kind of floating around in my head that this would be fun to do, to have that wall of Nintendo and have my friends be able to come over and just pick any game they wanted out of the whole collection that was released in North America. I never thought I'd get there, let alone to the point where we've looked at 110 games in my NES set in this series.